They grow up telling you the same story. If you work hard, stay disciplined, and make the right choices, success will follow. That effort is rewarded, that the system is fair. But if that were actually true, the outcome wouldn't look like this. We wouldn't be living in a world where a tiny group controls more wealth than entire nations, while millions work longer hours just to stay afloat. Something doesn't add up. And once you step back and look at how money actually moves through the economy, you realize the outcome isn't accidental. It's predictable. Over the past few decades, wealth hasn't just grown unevenly. It has been systematically pulled upward. In the early 1980s, the richest slice of society held a relatively modest share of total wealth compared to today. Fast forward to now, and that share has multiplied several times over. This didn't happen because everyone at the top suddenly became more talented or productive. It happened because the rules were changed in ways that quietly favored ownership over effort. To understand this, you have to separate two things that most people are told are the same: income and wealth. Income comes from working. Wealth comes from owning, and the modern economy overwhelmingly rewards ownership. Once the US abandoned the gold standard in the early 1970s, money itself changed. Currency was no longer constrained by physical limits. Governments gained the ability to create massive amounts of new money whenever they deemed it necessary, and they used that power extensively. Trillions of dollars entered the system over time. But this is where the illusion breaks. That money didn't spread evenly across society. It flowed into financial markets. Stocks rose. Real estate surged. Bonds inflated. Asset prices climbed year after year. If you already owned these things, your net worth ballooned. If you didn't, you were left watching prices run away from you. Wages, on the other hand, barely moved. While technology made workers more productive than ever, paychecks failed to reflect that growth. Productivity soared. Corporate profits exploded, but the average worker saw only marginal gains after inflation. The value created by labor didn't disappear. It was redirected. This shift is visible everywhere. Executive pay is a clear example. Decades ago, top executives earned multiples of the average worker's salary, but within reason. Today, those multiples are extreme, and the reason isn't better leadership. It's compensation structure. Stock-based pay transformed executive income into an asset-driven windfall. As markets rose, so did executive wealth. Meanwhile, the people actually producing goods and services remained tied to hourly wages that struggled to keep up with rising costs. Inflation plays a critical role here. Inflation doesn't punish everyone equally. It quietly transfers purchasing power away from those who live paycheck to paycheck and toward those who own appreciating assets. When prices rise, assets often rise faster. Labor does not. So inflation becomes a silent mechanism of redistribution upward. Credit deepens the divide even further. Access to cheap borrowing is one of the greatest advantages wealth provides. Those with assets can borrow at low interest rates, often below the rate of inflation. This means debt actually works in their favor. They can acquire more assets using borrowed money while inflation erodes the real value of what they owe. Time does the work for them. For those without assets, borrowing is entirely different. Interest rates are higher. Terms are harsher. Loans are often used for survival, not investment. A car to get to work, a medical bill, basic necessities. These debts don't generate income, they drain it. Interest compounds in the wrong direction. One group uses debt as leverage, the other is trapped by it. This difference compounds over time. One side experiences exponential growth through asset appreciation and reinvestment. The other earns linear income that stops the moment work stops. Inflation steadily erodes savings. The gap widens not because of effort, but because of math. Taxes reinforce this structure. Labor is easy to tax. It's visible, predictable, and immobile. Investment income is not. The tax code reflects this reality. Those who earn wages pay taxes immediately and consistently. Those who earn through ownership have access to lower rates, deferrals, and sophisticated strategies that minimize what they owe. The most powerful of these strategies involve never selling assets at all. By borrowing against appreciating holdings, wealthy individuals can access cash without triggering taxable events. Loans are not considered income. Over time, assets continue to grow, while taxes are deferred indefinitely. When wealth eventually transfers to the next generation, accounting rules reset values in ways that erase past gains entirely. What looks like a loophole is actually a cornerstone of modern wealth preservation. None of this is illegal. It is carefully designed, openly documented, and widely used, but it is inaccessible to most people. The system treats work as something to be taxed heavily, and wealth is something to be protected. History shows this pattern clearly. Periods of extreme inequality are not new. Ancient societies collapsed under the weight of concentrated wealth. Medieval economies operated under rigid ownership hierarchies. In the late 19th century, industrial monopolies amassed extraordinary power while workers lived in brutal conditions. Eventually, pressure built. Labor movements formed. Reforms followed. Regulations, unions, and progressive taxation reduced inequality for a time. The mid-20th century was an exception, not the norm. For a few decades, wages rose alongside productivity. Home ownership expanded. The middle class grew. But starting around 1980, the direction changed. Deregulation accelerated. Financial markets gained influence. Labor protections weakened. Capital became increasingly mobile. Wealth once again began pooling at the top. Crises accelerate this process. Economic shocks don't reset the system. They concentrate it. When financial systems fail, governments intervene to prevent collapse. But interventions tend to stabilize markets first. Asset prices recover quickly. Those who own them rebound. Those who rely on wages face layoffs, debt, and long-term damage. The financial crisis of 2008 is a textbook example. Risk-taking in the banking sector triggered a global meltdown. Millions lost homes and jobs. Entire communities were devastated. Meanwhile, institutions deemed too big to fail received enormous support. Capital survived. Labor absorbed the loss. Assets changed hands at discounted prices, often purchased by the same institutions that had caused the collapse. The pandemic followed a similar pattern. Massive stimulus propped up financial markets. Stock indices surged even as unemployment spiked. Those positioned in assets saw historic gains. Those without struggled through rising costs and shrinking security. Once again, emergency measures reinforced existing inequalities. Compounding ensures that early advantages grow larger over time. Starting with wealth allows access to opportunities that multiply wealth further. Starting without it requires extraordinary discipline just to maintain stability. Even exceptional effort struggles to overcome structural imbalance. Housing illustrates this clearly. Home prices have risen far faster than incomes. What was once an attainable milestone now requires decades of debt. Those who bought earlier benefit from appreciation. Those trying to enter later face barriers that grow every year. Ownership creates security. Renting transfers income upward indefinitely. All of this leads to a simple truth. The economy is structured to reward ownership far more than participation. It favors those who already have capital and extracts value from those who rely solely on work. This doesn't mean individual effort is meaningless. It means effort alone is insufficient. Understanding this changes how you view money, debt, taxes, and risk. It reveals why hard work often feels disconnected from financial progress. It explains why crises feel one-sided, and it clarifies why inequality persists regardless of growth. None of this guarantees collapse. Systems like this can persist for long periods, but history shows they eventually face resistance. Whether through reform, disruption, or crisis, concentration reaches a breaking point. The first step is awareness. Once you understand how the machine operates, you stop blaming yourself for outcomes that were never purely individual. You start seeing patterns instead of isolated events, and you begin thinking differently about ownership, leverage, and long-term strategy. This isn't about despair, it's about clarity. Because you can't navigate a system you don't understand, and you can't change one you can't see. If this shifted the way you think about money and power, subscribe. History doesn't just explain where we've been, it shows us where we're going.